Good morning. Good morning. So I'm super excited to be here because I love talking about this particular topic. I don't need to get too wonky on a certain subject. I just have to talk about data and why it's important. And that's like thrilling for me. So a little bit about me. I am a neuroscientist by training. I am a policy wonk now in DC. I'm a dog lover. And I work with service animal organizations, and I'm working on some stuff around that. I think one of the interesting things for me is when I got to DC, or even before I left, I got a lot of question marks and like questionable looks from colleagues and friends of mine when I said, I just got my Ph.D. in neuroscience, I'm going to Washington, D.C. Because that's not what academics do. And when I got to DC and I was kind of like figuring out, all right, now I'm like going to be a policy person, how do I do that? And I started talking to researchers in Washington, DC. They also said, why aren't you going into academia? And so in my experience, and even moving forward, 4 years in the Pentagon, 3.5 years at Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, when I meet new people and I tell them my background's in neuroscience, I always get a strange look and kind of go like, well, how did you wind up here? And like, this is what I want to change, because it shouldn't be a surprise that someone who's trained in research is working in policy. And I would actually argue that it should be something that is expected and wanted and fought for. Because like, we have the knowledge to understand the data and then use it to make solutions, right? So this is like really, really critical, and this is also why I love giving talks like this. Okay, so Arthur Conan Doyle, Sherlock Holmes, data, 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 I can't make bricks without clay. I love this quote, right? Data is the foundation to smart policy, to smart programs. If you want to, emotions are great, but data is going to help you actually figure out a solution. It's going to help you define the problem so that you can figure out the solution and hone that solution. This is a picture taken 2 years ago, last Sunday, so February 12th, 2015. This is the signing of the Clay Hunt SAVE Act, the Suicide Prevention for American Veterans Act. This, Susan and Richard Selke are in the corner over there, standing above the president as he's signing the bill. This was a huge victory for our community, for the mental health community, and I think really for advocates in general. I will get into a little bit about how this bill came to be, but essentially, it came because of the research that we were doing. It came because we were surveying our members and they were telling us that suicide prevention and suicides among their peers was a huge issue for them. It came because of reports from RAND and from the Office of the Inspector General at VA and the Government Accountability Office and other VSOs that were putting out reports on mental health issues. All of that got compacted into this legislation, into a series of executive actions that was signed by the president a year before this bill was signed into law. And it was put into a media campaign that, quite frankly, before 2014, people weren't talking about the suicide crisis in the veteran community. And when you can use data to build a very smart campaign, you can really impact change. So that's what I want to focus on as we go through this. So I like to kind of like give a little bit of our trade secrets away, right? This is the structure of IAVA's policy department. We've got the political department, we've got the ledge department, we've got the research department. These all feed into one another. Research builds the foundation, but I wouldn't know what to build if ledge and political didn't tell me like, hey, this is what's going on the Hill, and this is what the VA is saying, right? They couldn't know what to go to VA with or what policy change recommendations to go with, or they wouldn't know what to go to the Hill if not for the research that my department does. So we feed off of one another, quite frankly, to like ensure that everything that we're doing is grounded in data and numbers and science. That also helps us to inform programs that we do at IAVA, and hopefully programs that people do out in the community outside of IAVA, and feeds into our communications, right? So like, data is great, but if you're not telling the story, then that's a problem. So this is all about how do you take some of this really technical information and make it digestible for the public. That's really important. And so another quote that I love, Stephen Few is a tech guy. Numbers have an important story to tell. They rely on you to give them a voice, right? Numbers by themselves, really boring. But when you can really, like, for example, Play Hunt Save Act, Richard and Susan Selke were able to tell the story behind the numbers when it came to suicide and suicide prevention needs. That was critical. You give a face to the data, right? But someone's got to be talking about it. Academics often talk to me, will come up to me and say, I'm so frustrated, I've got these data and I don't know what to do with it. I've published them. I was like, okay, that's great. What else? What else do you do with it? Because in the academic world, in the academic framework, publishing is the expectation. But in the real world, the only people who reads academic literature are academics. And quite frankly, my experience in the Pentagon, when like a 4-star general got a hold of an academic paper, that was kind of a problem. If there wasn't someone to explain the context behind it, right? Like, no, like for real. This was actually a lot of what I did in the Pentagon, was to basically be the person at the table that said, no, just because this paper is saying this doesn't mean we want to enact this policy, because think about the 5 other things that could result if you did, right? So like, let's actually like have a broad perspective about what these numbers are telling us and have a conversation, not just about the immediate implications, but the second and third order effects. And like, how do we really integrate that into the larger policies of DoD? So it's really important to have people that can think that way to be able to advise, right? So the way that IAVA works, I think of the research department as 2 sources of data. Our members are fantastic. They are the ones that share their stories every day, that give us the real life, this is what's working and this is what's not. We have a survey that goes out every year to ask them about that. We also poll throughout the year. So, some hot topic comes up, I want to know what our members are thinking, right? Before we actually like push forward a position, we want to hear from our members. And so we'll throw out a poll. The other sources, this is basic lit review, right? So GAO, the VA Office of the Inspector General, I've already listed a ton of them. There's RAND and like there are number, Center for New American Securities. There's so many think tanks, partners, government agencies that are doing research. And part of the job of my department is to track that research and also kind of like wade through it to pull out the gems and kind of like take away the research that may not be as relevant or may not be as sound, right? It's not about just like digesting all of the research, but it's also about having a critical eye as to the flaws in some of the research that's being done and being able to explain that and account for that too. So I see this as like 2 lanes of information that we synthesize into all of the policy work that we do. IAVA's policy agenda, I call it the Bible. It is a beast. It's 11 chapters of policy recommendations. It's an 80-page document. The 11 chapters span anything from military families to homelessness to mental health to women veterans and so on and so forth. But it's one of the documents that I'm most proud of, because this is a comprehensive literature review turned into policy recommendations for not just Congress, not just the executive branch, but local agencies, philanthropists, nonprofits. This is something that we really, that we're really proud of as an evidence-based policy document, if you will, if you want to use that term. It's data-driven. It's a comprehensive review, and it also incorporates our community partners as we work on it. So that's one way we get the word out. Another way, research papers. When I first got to IAVA, I didn't know anything about veterans issues. I was working in the Pentagon. And we were just finishing the campaign to end the backlog, which is the disability compensation backlog that was pretty high at that point in 2013. And within a few weeks, I was basically tasked with writing a comprehensive review of the disability compensation system. Like, okay, great, can someone tell me what that is first? And then I'm happy to write a review, right? But like, this is what we do as researchers. We become subject matter experts. And so getting these reports out there and being able to share them allows us to also educate the rest of the nation about what is disability compensation and what is a backlog, right? Testimonies. We pride ourselves in our testimonies. When we go to the Hill, I have failed if there's not data in our testimonies. And so whether it's polling our members, taking numbers from our member survey, or pulling from other reports, our testimonies must be data-based, data-driven. Panels, presentations like this one, and Storm the Hill. Storm the Hill, I met Perry through Storm the Hill. Storm the Hill is our annual advocacy fly-in event. We bring members into DC. We launch a big campaign in 2014. That was the campaign to combat suicide. There's a lot of work that happens before we launch a campaign, and most of it is the research end, right? It's doing the member survey, pulling together our mental health advocates to back us up, and to give us their input as to what needs to change on this issue we're talking about. It's reviewing past legislation. It's looking forward and doing a gaps analysis to determine what needs to be filled in the future. That's how the Clay Hunt Save Act came to be. It was literally all of those steps. It was partnerships, it was research, and it was sharing a story that demonstrated that research. So every year we've got, at IAVA, we have our top priorities. This year, we're focusing in on women veterans and fully recognizing and improving fully recognizing women, and then improving services, defending the post 9/11 GI Bill, reforming government, so a lot of that's VA reform, but it's also DOD, and of course the campaign to combat suicide. I know this is a mental health symposium, but I list these on purpose because I think one of the things I also frequently encounter is the stovepiping of the issues that this community works on. So if you think about the post 9/11 GI Bill, this has provided education for over 1.5 million veterans and their dependents. Education generally leads to jobs. Jobs and employment and mission and purpose often are protective against mental health challenges, right? Interconnected. With women veterans, I think with that group, we see, we were actually having this conversation the other day as we were talking about some of the policy recommendations we're developing around women veterans. I think one of the things that's so important to recognize are women veterans are veterans. And so if we talk about suicide prevention, we're talking about suicide prevention for men and women. If we talk about education, we're talking about education for men and women. And so with women veterans, what I've learned over the years in talking with women veterans in surveying and other, is that the challenge is that as a minority group in the service, that access to services and access to supports can be much more difficult. And so that's really the challenge that we face in addressing this issue. We know that suicide among women veterans has been on the rise, right? Historically, women veterans have a higher risk of homelessness. Historically, they have a higher unemployment rate. So these are all issues that we need to recognize when we're talking about women veterans. And again, it goes back to these interrelated issues. I'm not going to get into the other two. What I really want to do now is I'm going to jump into just some data points that we've collected from our last survey and kind of like walk you through the process of how we as an organization and how I hope you as an audience and an audience interested in data will start to think about how do you use data to inform action. Because that's really my goal today, is to help you plan that out. Some of you might have more of a plan, some of you may have less of a plan, but I think it's really important to constantly be thinking about that. Okay, so this is, I think the number that stands out for me here, 15% of all of our members, these are men and women, feel the general public understands the contributions of women in the military. If you break that out by gender, it's 7% of women said they felt the general public understands their contributions, right? So right there, that highlights a huge problem. And when we followed this up with focus groups and we talked to women across the country, women veterans, this theme was repetitive. Whether it's seeking care at VA, whether it's going to their local VSO, whether Legion, VFW, whatever, or the grocery store parking in a veteran space. They have encountered these challenges to service, people who are challenging their service. And so, like, this tells us, number one, problem, we don't even as a society recognize women in service. So how do you provide services for a class of people that you don't even recognize really exists, right? So like that was the foundation that began our journey in building a campaign and policy recommendations around women veterans, recognizing that the first step is going to have to be a really honest conversation about what our military looks like now and what it's looked like for decades, right? Women are the fastest growing population in the veteran space. They're also joining the military at higher rates than ever before. The military is not only are women joining at higher rates, but the military is diversifying. Minority groups, their numbers are on the rise as well. And so being able to at least have that conversation of like, we have a diverse military. You know, it's not G.I. Joe anymore. It never was, actually, right? It never was. But like now more than ever, we need to recognize that. So that's really that's really the start of the campaign. And then from there, we've done a lot of research and had a lot of conversations with women veterans, with the VA, with our VSO partners, to share the knowledge we all have to really come up with our recommendations. And those recommendations are in the policy agenda. And we're refining them for the next iteration of the policy agenda, which is going to be coming out in the next few months. Defend the post 9/11 GI Bill. So this was an interesting and unique kind of development that happened last year. We are in a time of fiscal restraint, for sure. And when you're in a time of fiscal restraint, people look for more than ever. I mean, Congress is always looking for pay-fors, but more than ever, when you're trying to not spend up, you look for cuts. And last year, the cuts were targeted in cutting services out of the post 9/11 GI Bill. We were the only advocacy organization to stand up against that. Because we're the only post 9/11 generation out there, or post 9/11 organization out there that really does advocacy in DC. And so we recognize that in cutting this benefit, what are the second and third order effects if you start to whittle away at it? And initially it was a cut to the housing benefit. And so like the idea was, well, this is just the housing benefit, it's fine. But where does that lead you, right? Like you make one cut, then what happens next year? And what happens the year after? So like what precedent does that set? And that has been the concern. The other concern is, if you've promised this as a benefit to a generation that's now serving, and you're changing the benefit midway through, how does that promise then get honored? And what does that do to retention and recruitment in the military? Right? So this really was, again, the foundation for our campaign to defend the post-9/11 GI Bill. It was based in the idea that 1.5 million people have used this benefit. One of the challenges we found is there's not a whole lot of data beyond that as to how well it's been used. Student Veterans of America actually just released a report last week that's starting to look at some of this. They've done a few reports on utilization for the post-9/11 GI Bill, but that's actually a huge gap that we've recognized at IABA, is that there's no one actually accounting for like what are the success metrics for the post-9/11 GI Bill. And if nobody's tracking that, we better fix that, because we want to know, right? Reform government for today's veterans. This slide, gosh, these numbers, when we first asked a question about just kind of rate your health before you joined the military and after you left service. It was the first time we asked was last year. And I was blown away by the response. So 92% rated their overall health before joining the military as good or excellent. 32% did the same for after. So this to me points to, like, it's a screaming, oh crap, we need to make sure we've got some good health care for our veterans, right? Because like, if these are veterans that have just left service, who are still young, what's gonna happen in the decades to come? And are we prepared for that? And I will tell you, no, we're not. The VA knows they're not. We all know we're not, because this is the first generation of veterans that have really sustained and survived the types of injuries that we're seeing come out of these wars. So we don't know how they're gonna age. We don't know what that's gonna look like. But we need to start planning for it, and we need to use research to figure this out before all of a sudden we've got a senior population of veterans who have traumatic injuries from decades past that are needing more services, right? So like this is critical to get this right. And then finally, the campaign to combat suicide. So with the campaign to combat suicide, I look at it in two ways, because I always hesitate to combine mental health and suicide prevention. They're related for sure, but they're not. We all know that suicide is not just a result of mental health challenges, that there are social factors that are involved as well. But I think it is important to look at access, mental health access to care. And these are actually, for me, these numbers were really heartening. Seeing that our members at least seem to be seeking care. They're recognizing they have mental health injuries. They're seeking care. And maybe if they're not recognizing it, but someone around them is, that person telling them or suggesting, hey, maybe you should go see someone, is actually having a really positive impact. So being able to carry that message forward of like, this is a community issue. And look, like 3 out of 4 of our members who had someone tell them you should get help, they got help. So yeah, this is a community issue, and we all need to be having that conversation with one another, right? I think one of the things too that I've been seeing over the years with this survey is that while stigma still exists, it's tremendously lower than when I first started in the Pentagon 8 years ago, for sure. And again, that's because we've been having these conversations, right? So just that effort of talking about this issue and like digging into the data and understanding where are the shortages, how can we better provide help. Peer support was not a thing 8 years ago when I was in the Pentagon, right? These programs have taken off. And so like getting those solutions and tracking them and seeing where they're being successful so that we can continue to grow them is really, really critical. This is the slide, and these are the numbers that led specifically to the campaign to combat suicide. 40% of our members in our last survey said that after joining the military, they thought about taking their life. I'm sorry, I keep like turning my back to you guys. I'm gonna like do this. It's because the computer's here. I blame the computer. So 40%. little less than half know someone who, know a post 9/11 veteran who's died by suicide. A little more than half know a post 9/11 vet that has attempted suicide. So like these numbers make it real. The stories make it even more real. And so this is really what began the journey of IAVA to really delve into creating the campaign to combat suicide, creating the asks for the SAVE Act, for the executive actions, and for doing this like grand kind of awareness campaign nationally. I'll tell you, like as an organization, we were scared to bring this topic up because it's not an easy topic to talk about, and if you don't know what you're doing, you can cause way more damage than good. And so this again was where having mental health partners that could help us speak the right language, doing our research and identifying that there were already like the AFSP, the Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and others of their partners had already put together an entire media package of like, this is how you talk about suicide. And that was all grounded in data and research that they had done. So by utilizing the research that was already out in the community, as well as combining it with our own, not only were we able to effectively put together what I think were some really smart policy fixes, but we were able to do that in a way where we were talking about the issue very safely and smartly. And when I say we, I don't just mean IAVA, I mean the community that was supporting this effort, because it wasn't just us. I think the thing that was really amazing to me is not only were we smartly talking about it, but we were educating other people how to talk about it too. Right? Back when we launched this campaign, many people would just say committing suicide, killing themselves, right? And so by being able to talk in a smart way, people adopted that language of die by suicide, and other ways of like making the conversation more appropriate. Okay, that was really heavy. So this guy, James Barksdale, is another like tech guy. And I saw this quote. I just like to go online and like look for quotes every so often. So if we have data, let's look at data. If all we have are our opinions, let's go with mine. Yeah, no. There's too much of that, right? That is absolutely the wrong solution. So I'm going to leave you with this, right? If we have data, let's look at the data. If all we have are our opinions, let's take the time to uncover the data and use them to make informed decisions. This seems like a hard place to go, but the time invested in finding the data is going to save dollars, and it's going to save time, and it's going to save lives. So like doing our due diligence and carrying that water so that others do their due diligence is so critical. So one last thing, this is my shameless plug, since we've been talking about IAVA survey. If you are a veteran and are a member of IAVA, or you are a veteran and not a member of IAVA, our survey is being fielded right now. So if you're a veteran and member of IAVA, I'd encourage you to please take the survey. If you're a veteran and not a member, join, please. It's free to join, iava.org /yjoin. You can actually just go to iava.org and you'll find a way to register, and when you join with us, you'll get the link to the survey. So I would appreciate everybody who is able to participate in that so that we can continue to do the work we do. Thank you.